Last but not least, we have kind of an oddball of this unit is something referred to percent of change. This may or may not be something that you did cover last year in 6th grade. Percent of change is when a question is asking you what is that percent of change from something old to something new. So we have kind of a new formula we're going to learn. When we're determining percent of change, I first have to subtract my new minus my old, or vice versa, and then put it over old, do that division, and then change it to a percent by multiplying by 100, which essentially just means move the decimal 2 times to the right if I'm multiplying by 100. And then we just have to determine whether it's a percent increase or percent decrease determined by the numbers. So let's jump right in. If I look at number 1, it says last week Joe ran 45 miles. This week he ran 34 miles. So the first thing I have to determine is whether or not this is a percent increase or decrease. Well, if I was at 45 miles last week and this week it's 34, it went down. So this is going to be a percent decrease. And I wish it was that easy, but we have math to do. So the first thing I have to do is subtract 45 minus 34. 45 minus 34 is 11. So 11 is my numerator. That's the difference between the old and the new. Versus my denominator, which would be the old. Well, in this case, the old number was 45. So I put 45 in my denominator. Now I'm going to divide that out. So I'm going to do 11 divided by 45. And then move the decimal place. Oh, sorry, there's no decimal there. Just a typo. I'm going to do divide. 45 does not go into 1 and it does not go into 11. So I have to put a decimal and a 0 and figure out how many times 45 goes into 110. Let's guesstimate 3 times. That's too large. So let's do 2 times, sorry. And that's 90. So 2 times would be 90. 110 minus 90 is 20. And then I'm going to add another 0 and continue. 45 goes into 200 4 times, which would be 180. And then subtract that, that's another 20. And you start to see a pattern of 4 repeating. Now, my next and last step is I need to change it to a percent, which means I'm going to move the decimal to, it should be 0.244 repeating. But because it's asking for percent change, I have to move the decimal 2 times to the right, which is like multiplying by 100. So 24.4 repeating percent is my answer, percent decrease. Let's do that again. A computer store changed the price of a laptop from $250 to $290. So this time it went from $250 to $290. That's a percent increase. So we're going to first subtract $290 and $250. That would be 40. So 40 is my numerator. Over the old, which if it was $250 to begin with, that would be my old. And then I'm going to divide that out. Now here's a trick that comes in handy with numbers like this. Anytime you have a 0 in both numbers at the end as your whole number or your ones place, I can actually just take away both zeros and simplify that to 4 over 25. So we're going to do 4 divided by 25. And then 25 does not go into 4, so to continue I put a decimal and a 0. 25 goes into 40 once. When I subtract that, I get 115, and then I put a 0 to continue. 25 goes into 156 times, which is exactly 150. Now my answer should be 0.16, but then since it's percent change, I'm going to move the decimal 2 times over. So it would be 16% increase. And that's it. Next one, Asarka Club has 120 members this year compared to 85 last year. So it was a percent increase because it's kind of backwards. 120 members this year. Last year it was 85, so it's actually a percent increase. And so I still subtract 120 minus 85, which would be 35. So 35 is my numerator. And then the old would be last year's number, which would be 85. Okay, and then I'm going to divide that out. So 35 divided by 85, pretty large number there, but we can do it. 85 does not go into 3, 85 does not go into 35, so it's a decimal and a 0. And I have to figure out how many times 85 goes into 350. And this is just kind of trial and error. Ooh, it's exactly 4. Let me double check. Oh, no, that's 34. It's 340, and then when I subtract, I get 10, a 0 to continue. 85 goes into 100 once, which would, I subtract that, would be 150. And then 85 would go into 150 once. So then I subtract 85 and 150 and continue on. So then I have 2 decimal places I'm going to move, which would be about 41.1% increase. Okay. Next one, Lily's old car seat held a maximum weight of 40 pounds. Her new car seat has a max weight of 70. So this is a percent increase because it went up. First, I have to subtract 70 minus 40, which would be 30. That's my numerator. Over the old, which it said the old car seat was 40 pounds, so over 40. Again, this trick you could do is anytime zeros are involved is get rid of the zeros. And so then I can just divide 3 divided by 4, which 4 times does not go into 3, so I have to put a decimal and a 0. 4 does go into 30 about, 7 times, which is 28, which I subtract, I get 2 and add another 0, which is exactly 20. 4 goes into 25 times. So it should be 0.75, but with the percent, I have to move the decimal twice. So it would be a 75% increase. Carlos made $435 last week and $600 this week. So I first have to subtract 600 minus 435, borrow there, and 10 minus 5 is 5, 9 minus 3 is 6, 5 minus 4 is 1. So the difference would be 165, which goes in my numerator. And then the old would be 435. And so now I'm going to divide those out. So let's see, 165. And this is a hefty one because of how large the numbers are. 435 does not go into 1. It does not go into 16. It does not go into 165. So we got a decimal and a 0. So I'm going to guesstimate how many times 435 goes into 1,650. If we do 3 times, oh, that's a good guesstimate. That would be 3 times, which would be 1,305. When I subtract that out, oh, sorry. Start that one over. Sorry, this is one. Okay, 345, and then I continue on with another 0. So that would be 435. Let's try 7. Pretty good. Let's see if we can do 8. Oh, too large. So it would be 7 times. And most of the time on these questions, you would have a multiple choice situation. So you can sort of use your answer so far, like 0.37, move your decimal twice, and look for your answer of 37% something, because these are pretty messy. Penelope spent $20 on a grocery store last week. This week she spent 105. So first things first is I subtract 120 and 105. So I subtract that out, that would be $15. So 15 is my numerator, whereas the old was 120. I'm going to divide that out. So I've got to do 15 divided by 120. 120 does not go into 1. It does not go into 15. So I put a decimal and a 0. 120 goes into 150 once, which would be 30. And I'll put another 0. 120 goes into 300 by, sorry, let's see. No, that would be too large. Twice, which would be 240. 300 minus 240 would be 60. Add another 0, so 600, which would be 5. And then so it's about 0.125, but I move my decimal 2 times to the right, which would be 12.5% decrease. And then it just continues, more repetition here. So 215 to 268, I'm going to do 268 minus 215 and subtract. So that would be 0.53, which would be my numerator. And then the old price was $2.15. So then I'm going to do 0.53 divided by 2.15. I'm going to move my decimal 2 times. And so 215 does not go into 5. It does not go into 3. So I'm going to have to put that decimal in a 0 and guesstimate how many times 215 goes into 530. Let's say 2 times, which would be 430, which is as high as I can go, which is 100. Add another 0 and figure out how many times 215 goes into 1,000. Too large, so 215 times 5, which is still too large, so 215 times 4, and so that would be about 860. And so I can guesstimate from there if I have answer choices, move my decimal place, and it would be about 24%. And again, just guesstimating because it gets pretty messy. All right, this one. Tammy made 24 cupcakes yesterday and 14 today. The difference between 24 and 14 is 10, so 10 would be my numerator. The old or yesterday would be 24. So then 10 divided by 24 would be, 24 does not go into 1, it does not go into 10. So I do a decimal and a 0, figure out how many times 24 goes into 100. Oh, that's too big. Which would be 96. So 4 times would be 96. Subtract that, that would be 40. And then 24 goes into 40 once, which would be 24. Subtract that. And I know if I guesstimate and move my decimal twice, it would be about 41%. So again, just not 41% exactly, but close to it. Let's just do one more because it gets repetitive. Again, just lots of math. All right, if I have 127th graders completed their homework last week compared to 104 this week, I'm going to subtract 120 minus 104. When I subtract that out, it would be 16. So 16 is my numerator over the original, which was 120. Now, something different we could do, if I know percent is out of 100, I can put 100 here. We would cross multiply. 16 times 100 is 1,600. Then divide that by 120. When I divide that by 120, I can get rid of a 0 from both and just make it 12. 12 doesn't go into 1, but 12 goes into 16 once. When I subtract that, I get 4. Then bring down a 0. 12 goes into 40, let's say 3 times because that's 36. Another 4. When I subtract that, 40. 12 goes into 43 again. And so it would be 13.3 repeating percent. And when I multiply by that 100 initially, then I don't have to move the decimal. It would just be 13.3.